got Fishing and Eat. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's doing well in the middle of the week. Been a crazy couple days. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on. And you know how it is in November, right? I always talk about this a lot, the old off-season type of thing. And I think that's kind of like a misnomer, at least for a lot of people in my parts of the country. I think we buy into a little bit of the commercialization aspects of, if you notice, like everything that's being pumped in right now is, you know, from a commercial standpoint of everything that's coming probably to your phone, everything that's coming to your email, everything that's coming, you know, in front of you via social media for the most part, that's generic, that's not like in a specific group, obviously. It's probably hunting related, right? Because all the hunting seasons are starting, okay? And so people sleep on fishing in the fall. Like, I get it, September, October, I mean, especially where we are in the DMV, that's the District, Maryland, and Virginia, this year was not an early fall. I mean, it was a late summer in September. I mean, the temperatures, I mean, we just had 75, 78-degree temperatures a week ago, okay? You know, going into the elections. On election Tuesday. I mean, that was end of October into November. We were still in the 70s. Okay. So, but a lot of people just stop fishing in like after Labor Day. Right. And I think a lot of it is we've become preconditioned to that in terms of everything that's being shot at us. Right. Like, you know, and in reality, what you're finding is fall fishing is better than summer fishing. Okay. I've been an advocate for that for years. And a lot of people just, you know, for whatever it is, it's fall offers a lot more distractions than the summer does, right? Kids are back in school in September. Football, if you're a big SEC guy like me or a Big Ten guy, you know, or ACC, you know, in the Southeast on the coastal, you know, if you're down with that, like there's just a lot more going on the weekends, right? For the weekend warriors. Doesn't matter whether you're beating a bank, doesn't matter whether you're jet boating the Susquehanna, doesn't matter whether you're like out in the Chesapeake Bay, or doesn't matter if you're on the Potomac River or Allegheny, Monocacy, or any number of things. There's just so many. Your kids have sports in the fall, right? Not so much when school's out during the summer, unless your kids are participating in like, you know, travel clubs or major things. You know, in our neck of the woods, you got youth hockey is friggin' rolling. So all that's going down. And then fishing kind of takes a back seat. And then let alone almost all the tournaments wrap up, right? The tournaments wrap up. It's almost like the tournament industry defaults to the hunting aspect. It's almost as if the outdoors is bipolar, right? And so you've got these mechanisms in place where it's fishing just shuts down. People go on to hunting or focuses on hunting, or the professional anglers go home for a little while, or the tournaments just stop. We just had Tournament of Champions Hobie finished up on Caddo. Congratulations to everybody who completed the Hobie Series, Bass Open Series this season, and completed their Tournament of Champions. Great event from what I understand, over the weekend, 3-day event. And then that's it till February, right? And so we go from, you know, this year, early November to like February, and, you know, fishing just kind of comes to a stop. And a lot of that, I believe, is commercialization and marketing. It's not has anything else to do with it. Fish are still biting. Fish are still there. Fish are changing. And a matter of fact, they're bigger. We're going to get into that in a second. Records are falling, mates. They are falling. Like, some of them haven't even been published yet. But the number of quality fish that are being caught in the rivers in the region right now is absolutely ridiculous. And most people probably won't hear about it or know about it because they've kind of tuned off to fishing, and they're focused on other things, right? And so you've got that going down, which is kind of a shame. Those of us who fish throughout the fall, love to fish in the fall, you got to kind of have a use of the elements. Right now, Upper Potomac, crazy, okay? Crazy. I mean, when you think about this for a second, and we'll talk about patterns and spots versus patterns, or areas are sites versus patterns, okay, in a minute. But let's just look at the 2 locks, or we'll look at 3 locks, okay, which pretty much those of you who are familiar with the channel know that I'm on the Upper Potomac, depending on the time of year, 3 to 5 times a week, okay, 3 to 5 times a week. Come spring, I'll probably be on the Potomac every day, because there's a lot going on that's going down now. We have some things working out that I'm going to be taking people out on the river probably every day. And you know, that's a big deal. That's a big thing. You know, for me, wanting to get people out on the river, enjoy the river, experience the river, without having to drop $550. Okay. That's the reality. Most people right now in the economy cannot part with $550 to go out for 4 or 6 or 8 hours on a guide trip. And people hit me up all the time. And like, when are you fishing again? When are you fishing again? I've had guys meet me at the ramp. I've had guys do that stuff. Finally, I was like, you know what? Let's just screw this. Let's just like form a nonprofit. Let's just like say, hey, look, okay, if you want to go out on the water, you know, donate $25 or $50 to, we're going to specify some nonprofits. Okay. Heroes on the Water, veterans organizations, autism organizations. That's it. That's all you got to do. Come out on the river with me, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, Upper Potomac. I don't really care. I'm going out anyway. I'd be more than happy to bring you along, you know, and show you where I fish and show you what everything that's going down. Just make a small donation to a nonprofit or a charity. That's it. Because the economy is going to get tough, and you'll be able to come out more times if you're doing that than say one time. I love guided trips because for me, they're like vacations. You know, you go to a different area. I've got some of mine lined up for next year, for myself on new water that I've never fished before, for species that I've never really, you know, dedicated myself to go out, like walleye, you know, muskie, those kind of things, like really consistently that I don't fish for during the regular year because I'm smallmouth fishing. But I want to experience that. A mate reached out to me the other day about snakehead fishing in the spring, taking me out for a 2-day weekend in his part of the region, because I just don't get an opportunity to do that. So that's what I'm about. I'm about trying to get people on the water. I'm about trying to get people to experience the water, understand the water, all that stuff. And that was just so many people go, hey, these are the days I'm fishing. You can meet me at this ramp, or this ramp. So that's what we're going to do in the spring. Is we're going to be, look, you know, I'll publish the schedule up when I'm going to be out, what lock I'm going to be fishing from, set the stages up. You're going to see it coming up in a couple episodes. And also the channel will break down the actual lock floats that you can do yourself or you can do with me. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter to me. I just want you to get out there and experience it, because the river in the next 2 years is going to be completely different, mates. And so what I've done this year with people is take them out during low-level conditions on the Upper Potomac, right, where you could get out of your kayak or your canoe and wade different areas. And there's plenty of videos on YouTube. You can check those out. A lot of them are in short form on the YouTube channel, JL Scott Fishing and Eats. But you find your locations then, and then now what we're experiencing now, you know where the pools are. You know where the deeper water is going to be. A week and a half ago, mates, okay, about, let's say 10 days ago, 12 days ago, Edwards Ferry was under 3 feet, okay? That's a major launch spot, especially for boats on the Upper Potomac. It's now over 6 feet, mates. It's going up over 3.5 feet in 10 days, 10, 12 days, okay? Point of Rocks, 10 days ago, was a foot or less, okay? It's now almost 4 feet. So what does that tell you? All the rain we got, Tropical Storm Nicole, last night, I put the bucket out, okay? I know this is rudimentary science. I put the bucket out on the deck because I was like, okay, they're calling for rain, okay? I want to see. I checked it this morning. There was 3 inches to 3.5 inches of water in that bucket just at my house, okay? Like, it's crazy. Drop the girls off, okay? Drop the girls off. Those of you guys know I'm in the Rockville area, Rockville, Potomac, okay? So, boom, I'm in out of Rockville, head straight to the Potomac River, hit 2 docks. I'm sorry, locks, not docks. Hit 2 locks up. You would not believe how high the water is just in the span of 5 days. on Friday, you could literally see all the rocks. You could walk all the way across from the Maryland side to the Virginia side if you wanted to, below your knees, all the way across, okay? Above Pennyfield towards Riley's, okay? From the towpath, go walk down a quarter mile on the towpath, cut over, cut on the Potomac, wade fish all the way across. This morning, good luck. This morning, it's 5 feet. It's 4.5 to 5 feet. That is the drastic change since Friday and Saturday, okay? And so that's what you're experiencing. So a lot of people are like, okay, where am I going to go fish? Just change how you're going to fish. We were fishing jigs last week. We were fishing inline spinners last week. We were fishing, different things like that. Lower water conditions. Everything was under like 2.5 feet. You had to find those pool areas that were a little bit deeper, okay? And so that's what you would do. Back off of eddies, find the deeper water, find some bigger rock with some thermals that they maybe, because the temperatures did drop. Remember, the temperatures were 78 degrees, and then they dropped back into the low 40s. So those smallmouths were looking for thermals, okay, to at least be to relate to or align to, but yet still be close to obviously fall feeding patterns, right? And so when we're getting into patterns, right? And so people use that word a lot, and it it's one of those situations where you can kind of you basically can overthink out of what you're doing. For me, I get it for people that are traveling, okay, that are traveling to tournaments or they only have a couple days to break down in pre-fishing, right? They only have so much time, 2 days on the water. Some people don't have any time on the water and they just do it on the fly, and they've got to break a river down, or they've got to break a lake or a reservoir and impoundment down, which makes it difficult. And so those are the people, I think, if you listen to, and a lot of them don't really have a lot of social media presence. So you kind of have to like catch them at the ramp or catch them at sometimes at these events, and kind of listen in and kind of listen to them. These are smart freaking people, okay? These people that are consistently winning in BFL and in boaters, as well as in the kayak side, Hobie events, KFL events. I'm sorry, not KFL, KBF events, and KFL. There's a lot of smart dudes in KFL anglers as well. Listen to what they're saying, okay? Because for them, these are people that can break down rivers, lakes, and reservoirs relatively quickly. Now, some people will go and spend 2 weeks before an event. I think that should get banned. I think we need to be done with that. I just don't. I mean, boaters can go a week or so, I think, for the most part. I mean, I can kind of get that. But here's the thing about what's happening. And I know I'm in the minority of this, mates, and I know I'll get all kinds of hate. I always do. And that's fine. It comes with the territory of getting on a stream or getting on a YouTube channel and talking all the time. Look, I'm a schmuck on YouTube, okay, like everybody else, all right? So it doesn't bother me. But there comes to a point when we're spending a week on the water and then 3 and 4 day competitions. So it's basically that fishery's getting pressured for a week and a half. At some point, someone needs to step up and be like, we're done. Like, it ain't going to happen. There's too much money on the line. I get that. But at some point, I mean, it's one thing if it's the angler's choice, right? Like, the angler can go and spend a week at Champlain, a week at Cayuga, Oneida, a week at the Potomac River, whatever, spend their own money, do whatever, housing, gas, all that stuff. They want to do all that. And then the tournament then has 3 days or 4 days. That's the part that probably needs to get dialed back. Like, because they are inevitably impacting the fisheries, and states are beginning to take notice. They are. And so ultimately, you've got to look at the climate and understand the future of what's happening in a lot of these regions across the country. Of course, there are going to be some regions that are going to be well protected, that are outdoor states, that are, they're not going to mess with it. But there are going to be other regions, especially in the Northeast, okay, in the Mid-Atlantic, that are changing. Politics are changing, and the environment influence on politics is changing. And so you're going to find these tournaments probably getting limited. Like, I already know in 2 years, from a black bass standpoint, you're going to have a ton more restrictions in Maryland and Virginia and the Chesapeake Bay and Potomac in these watersheds in 2 years. It's coming. Okay. And if there are going to be periods where you're not going to be able to fish, okay, like during the spawn, you're not going to be able to have fish in your live well during the spawn. Everything's going to be catch and release. Things like that are going to happen, mate. The ball is already in that direction. And all it takes is a catalyst. You've seen it. All it takes is an event. Think about this. Think about what happened in kayak fishing in the last few months. As soon as there was a protest against Drew Gregory, it was like the bottom fell out in kayak fishing in terms of rules. Everybody suddenly was talking about rules. Everybody suddenly was talking about boundaries. Stuff that was talked about around the campfire or in chat on groups on Facebook, kind of on the down low, and all came to front and center after the cheating scandal for the walleye event, right, in Ohio. So it was like a double whammy, okay, in the fishing community. A lot of people probably didn't pay attention to the kayak fishing side, especially if you're a boater side or whatever, but it was meaningful in terms of the impact on lakes and fisheries and boundaries and what's going to happen in the future. So that was an interesting thing that now everyone was talking about. Now everyone's changing their rules, mates. It always takes a catalyst. The issue that people need to recognize and get involved and get engaged locally, wherever you are, it doesn't matter where you are watching this stream from, what state you're in, is get involved in your state for your DNR, your DWR, whoever it is, because there are people that are putting pressure on those government. Remember, these people are government employees, okay? And while they still have jobs, regardless of who the governor is, okay, they're still a product of the whims of the political waves, okay? And so when you have people that are already setting the stage, making recommendations for revisions to regulations, enforcing greater regulations on fisheries, that they're just kind of like mulling over at the moment, when an event happens that is a lightning bolt for people, okay, like you saw with the cheating scandals and you saw with the boundary issue with Drew Gregory in the kayak fishing community, it becomes a catalyst for people to then suddenly get engaged, and it's already there ready for them to implement it. And that's what's going to happen in the next 2 years, especially if you live in my region, is they're getting more pressure put on them from non-anglers. Okay, usually it's anglers being like, hey, stock my lake, stock my river. What are you doing? Why aren't you stocking this? Why are you doing this? Why are you allowing the hydrilla? Why are you doing all this stuff? Why are you removing the grass? Why are you adding carp? Why are you doing all this stuff, right? That's from the angler community. But what about the people who don't fish, who don't care about us? They care about the environment on a macro perspective. They care about global climate change on a macro perspective, whatever the hell that is, okay? Made up science, I don't know what it is, because for every guy that you can find that's like a climate change advocate, there's 2 more scientists that are like, that's bunk. So I don't know what to believe, okay? Sort of like acid rain when I was a kid. We don't have acid rain anymore. Remember, it was a big push in the late 70s and 80s and all that stuff. You know, it was like, to me, global climate change is just an extension of that whole, stuff. But you got to be aware of it, because the changes will happen. And the problem is we don't want to have happen is now you're seeing these river systems in the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast come back from major flood stage events of 14, 16, 18. 18 was bad, okay? They're coming back, mates. And so now we don't want to do some man-made impact, right? Like, those were natural impacts, okay, of flooding events, okay? Fish kills were a product of probably man-made impacts on the Shenandoah because of the fertilizer, the plants, and all that stuff that are along that watershed. A lot of that's been kind of like addressed, not 100%, but enough to where that river is coming back. And in 2 years, you are going to see these records continue to fall, mates. I'm telling you right now, the big ends are being caught. So let's just take a look at what's gone down here in the last week. And we're not even talking black bass yet, okay? New sawguy record. Remember that's a hybrid, right? Sauger, walleye, okay? Like a lot of stuff going on in fish breeding, right? And a lot of stuff being introduced into these fisheries. 6-pound saugeye, Staunton or Stanton, depending on where you're from, river, okay? 6 pound, 26 and a half inches, new state record. Michael Miner, okay, from Virginia, okay? Again, depending on your state, you got to do the biology's got to certify it. They've got to do all that. Sometimes they do genetic testing. Sometimes they do all this other stuff. But it's got to get certified, scale certified by state biologists, all that stuff. So you've got a couple more coming. It's just a process that a lot of states have to go through. Okay, Josh Bailey, a 69-pound blue catfish in the Rappahannock River, taken with a bow. Crazy. 69-pound catfish, archery state record. Okay, on the Rappahannock. Which actually was bigger than the one taken by Jason Emmel on the Pamunkey. Okay, so that's 2 river systems producing 65 plus blue channel cats. I want you to think about that. I mean, that's crazy. They're not done yet. Richard Hyde, a 48-pound flathead. 48-pound flathead taken. Belmont Bay. These are all post-summer. These are like post-summer, September, October. This is what I'm talking about. These are big fish being taken in the fall, mates. This is why I love the freaking fall. And I know a lot of people think I'm freaking crazy because they're done. They've packed their kayak. They put their boat away. They're winterizing their stuff. They're doing whatever. And those of us that are out on the water still fishing are catching their biggest personal best of the year. Okay? A 4.15 smallmouth taken in the upper Potomac. Right before Tropical Storm Nicole hit. Okay? You've not seen 4-pound smallmouths get taken below Harper's Ferry in probably 2 or 3 years. I'm not joking. That many. There's always that aberration. There's always that one. But I'm talking about like they're getting taken. Okay? 20-inch smallmouths are getting taken. 20.75, okay, are getting taken in the upper Potomac. I mean, that's Susquehanna stuff, mates. Like, we haven't seen that in the upper Potomac in years. That's how quickly it's coming back. Why is it coming back? It's coming back because the grass is coming back in the upper Potomac. If you check my videos out from summertime, comparing to the year before, crazy growth in grass. Why? Because we haven't had any flooding that's actually moving all that river composition further and further down, stripping it, okay? And that's a big deal, okay? So lots of grass this year in the upper Potomac. And so you've got to remember that stuff. So where we're at with the upper Potomac now is, well, before I get to that, let me just talk about this really quick. Black Friday sales, mates. Black Friday sales. Big deal. Susquehanna Fishing Tackle, SFT, Black Friday sale. Check it out on my J.L. Scott Fishing and Eats Facebook page. You can find a link or just go to Susquehanna Fishing Tackle. You can figure out they've got their in-store sale, they've got their online sale, and they're also going to have, I think, a Cyber Monday after Thanksgiving sale. So check that out. You also have Journeys Outdoors in Lexington, Virginia. They've got a Saturday, I think, after Thanksgiving. I can't remember what that's called, but it's kind of like a business thing Saturday they got going on for there. And so you want to check Green Top, obviously, in Ashland. We'll have some Black Friday sales, obviously. But you definitely want to check that out. Because you're gonna find some deals. If you're looking for electronics, I already know I got the messages to me. Guys trying to get me into the electronic game with some Panoptics and some Live Scope and some all that stuff. Bait, Betarex, try them out. You can find that on my fishing page. They're having a huge electronic sale. Okay, and I think you can get that online. I don't think you have to get it in the store. They're down in Missouri. Okay, they're not in our region, but it's still a great shop for you to check out. So check that out. Anyway, so that's if anyone else has any other Black Friday deals they're aware of, go ahead and post it under those on my Facebook page, and I'll check them out and try and get them to the email list, get them out to everybody in the text group, and all of that stuff, so people are aware of, the sales that are going on. So Upper Potomac right now, we're looking at over 7 feet by the weekend, probably Edwards Ferry, White's Ferry, okay, in that section of the Upper Potomac. Lock section by me, we're looking at probably 4 feet. I posted the current this morning when I was out there. I posted the current NOAA data for the locks. Little Falls, Point of Rocks, Edwards Ferry. Okay. Actually, it would be Little Falls, Edwards Ferry, Point of Rocks. Okay. And you can see how much the water has come up. I mean, we're looking at increases of 4 to 5 feet in a lot of parts of these sections. Okay. That is and can set up to be a very good thing. Remember, for about a month, we stayed unseasonably low in the river in terms of water levels. Water got cold. Water came down below, okay, fell below 60, then low 50s, okay, in 2 feet of water. All right, so the water gets colder faster, right? The shallower the water is. We all know that. Now we're getting this rain. We're going to get more rain in the next 48 hours. They're calling for more rain. So what you're going to see if you look on the NOAA data is you're going to see the river is climbing to about 5 feet and 7 feet, and then it's going to dip for about a day or two and then continue its climb. Probably Edwards Ferry could see 8 feet probably, if the actual projections of they're calling for rain. So how does that change your mindset in terms of approaching what people would call the pattern, right? And this is where fishing rivers consistently that you fish and you fish more than like once for a tournament, you get to know the river, okay? And rivers tend to be the same in a lot of instances. So it's more about locating the right area, not the right pattern. Like in terms of, I fish predominantly a 12-mile stretch. So I know a lot about the islands. I know a lot about where the deeper pools are. I know a lot about the rock lines, the ledges from when the rivers are shallow. If you go back and look at those videos, okay? Ledges in the Potomac, ledges in the Shenandoah River, okay? What happens to those areas when there's a water change, okay? Remember, we're in November. Fish already are beginning to recognize the fact that it's almost winter. They are programmable biologically to find deeper water. Well, now they've been provided that deeper water. Okay. Naturally, they've been provided that deeper water because we've just saw an influx of 5 feet of water over the last 10 days come into the river. So when you're fishing in the spring and the summer and low water conditions, you find where the best spots are going to be in the fall. Okay, you're going to find where the fish are going to move to. Okay, remember, when you increase your water, okay, level in your river, your eddies change, right? Do they get narrower or do they get wider, right? What happens to your seam line, right? Between when the river's at 2 feet and the river is at 6 feet. Do they disappear? Well, in certain sections of the river, they do. Depending on how flat the river is, depending on the angle of the river and the size of the rocks and all that stuff as the current's coming down. Some things will change dramatically, and in other areas, nothing changes. The seam is still the exact same seam, okay? Whether it was 5 feet or 2 feet. And so that change in water level and depth is your opportunity, okay? And a lot of people miss that mindset, and they're looking for a pattern. Well, the fish are supposed to be feeding up, right? And so I'm an advocate for looking, obviously you need to know what the forage is. Okay. You guys know that from this channel. And then matching your forage in terms of your bait selections and all that stuff seasonally. But you also need to identify areas of the river where the fish are going to move to. Most people do not understand. Smallmouth bass will move 2 to 3 miles. Okay. They're not largemouth bass. Okay. Yes, there are resident Okay. But within a section of a river, those smallmouth will move consistently. Okay. Throughout the year. They're not sedentary unless there's some kind of an event. Okay. That happens in your river that causes smallies to just shut down. Okay. Usually when that happens, it doesn't happen very long, stay for very long. Okay. And so I want you to like understand that about your river. It doesn't matter whether you're on my river or your river, in terms of what happens when these water events happen. You're looking at a 5-foot change, mates. So how's that going to impact your fish? Is your area going to get impacted more, or are the fish going to be impacted more? So finding those areas in the late summer or late spring, early summer, when you're out fishing, you're fishing grass, you're fishing in 2 feet of water, you found the grass, you found the ledges, okay? If those areas become deeper on opposite sides adjacent to that, okay, where do you think the fish are going to go in November or going into wintertime? Right? Yeah. The pattern is they should be feeding up, but it's also an area within your section of the river that they're going to gravitate to. So being there and getting there, okay, in events like this is what's going to reward you, because that's where they're going to go. They've been in low shallow water conditions for 3.5 weeks. This happens during the summer more than it really happens in the fall. So it'll be interesting to see what that dynamic's going to be. But they already want to biologically, again, they're biologically conditioned to want to move to deeper water. Okay. Largemouth bass as well. Okay. If they're done feeding up, they're going to move back. Okay, off of points, suspended on points if they're largemouth bass, right? If they're smallies in a river system, you don't really have those points, right? You don't. What you have are structure, natural structure. Okay, you don't have very many docks on the Potomac, right? Okay, you don't really have that in the Upper Potomac or on the Monocacy or probably on the Allegheny or the Yaak. You don't really have a lot of docks, right? Like you would for largemouth in the Bay or on the Potomac. And so they're looking for natural structure with thermals, okay, that they can move to and then move away from to feed and then move back to, up under those rocks, right? Up under. A lot of times when you're in the river like I was last Friday, it was a beautiful day, clear water, okay? You literally could see the smallmouth bass's head, but nothing else because they were up under rocks, okay, that were angled. The water over the years has come downriver and just kind of chiseled that rock out. So where it's now curved, they're right up under there, mates. They like to have something over their heads during the fall a lot of times. And the biggins during the summertime, that's where they camp out. You know, you're very rarely are you finding really big, I'm talking about 20s, 19s to 21s, smallmouth in the Upper Potomac roaming in the summertime in shallows. They feed at night, okay? The big smallies predominantly in my river system feed at night. They don't feed in the summertime during the day. In the fall, lower light conditions, remember, okay, shorter days, longer days, right? Everything that we learn about being out on the water, getting dark longer or shorter, how does that impact fish? Okay? Lower light conditions bring the biggins out. That's why the big fish are caught in the fall. And the quantity of fish are often caught in the summer. I mean, that's because there's a lot smaller bass roaming around during the summertime, younger juvenile bass feeding up, being curious, doing what they do in the channels and in the shallows. But the bigger ones are hunkered down when it's 90 degrees outside and it's only 2 feet of water, 3 feet of water in the river. They're hunkered down. They will go out and feed during the night. But in the fall, that changes, okay? That's why you're seeing 4-pound smallmouth get taken right now in both the Upper Potomac, the Yaak, the Allegheny, and on the Monocacy, okay? This is why. Is because the dynamic of the river has changed because it's the fall. The weather, the light conditions have changed, right? And so they are now, it's also less fishing pressure, mates. That's the beauty of fall fishing. If you can layer it up and deal with being out on the water when it's 45 degrees to 50 degrees or lower, you're going to be rewarded. And so we're transitioning from the jigs to now moving towards what? Okay. So your water has risen from 2 feet to 6 feet, or a foot to 4 feet at the point of rocks. Okay. How do you attack that water? Right? You've identified your areas because you fished it numerous times already. So you know where the deeper water was when the river was low. That area is now going to be even deeper water. Okay. That's how it works. Okay. And so when you go out now, you want to apply the things that you know. For me, I've already, for my trip, like today, not fishing today, but I went out this morning. I went to 2 locks this morning. I checked the water depths out. I checked the water temperature out. I checked where I know the rock lines and ledges are because I'm out there all the time. So I know what I'm looking at, even though I can't see the rocks anymore. I know where they are, okay? Because I fish it 3 to 5 times a week, okay? So I can see, okay. And so I've already got 3 rods. I've already got spinner baits. I've already got that ready. Why do I have spinner baits already tied on the rods for heading out tomorrow? Because of rising water, okay? Rising water. A lot of guys, you will hear a lot of mates talk about this, okay? What is the situation when you're fishing in a tournament and you hear guys talk about, well, they let the water out, right? The dam, they opened the dam, they let the water come in, right? I was on a pattern, and then they let the water in, or they turn the water off. You hear that all the time. All right, guys, like, well, what happened to your area? Now, a lot of tournament anglers will talk about it, and a lot of guys that are recreational anglers like me, for the most part, have plan A, plan B. My got spot one. Okay, plan A, plan B always talks about like people talk about the pattern. What's the pattern change going to be? For me, I've got area 1, area 2, area 3. Okay, and how are those 3 areas going to be impacted tomorrow if we get 2 more inches of rain tonight? Tomorrow, if they open the dam up. Tomorrow, if they shut the water off, right? Okay, like how are your areas that you've identified in your river system, or impoundments in rivers, okay, like Pickwick, okay? Shout out to Jonathan Dietz in Pennsylvania for qualifying for the Bassmaster Classic. Good job, Jonathan. Shout out to that, my man. Awesome for finishing 3rd on Pickwick. But how does that impact the pattern, or does it impact your area of where you're fishing? So the switch has to be is, these are my areas. These are where I've caught fish. Maybe I was pre-fishing, or maybe I've been here before, that kind of stuff. And these are the areas that I've identified. What's going to impact those areas tomorrow when I'm going out fishing? If it rains tonight, or if we get more rain, or they open up, or whatever the conditions are for wherever you're fishing, you want to make mental notes of, okay, because a lot of times these people don't tell you. Mother Nature's not going to tell you that she's going to dump 3 inches of rain on the upper Potomac like she did last night. Okay, no one's picking up the phone and calling you. Nobody from the dam is picking up the phone and calling you and telling you this is what we're going to do at this time, right? So you have to have your areas and know what can impact your areas, and then how are the fish in that area going to react. Those fish, if they're largemouth, aren't going to move crazy, right? Smallies will freaking move for, like I said, upwards of 2 to 3 miles, okay? And they will do it rather quickly over the course of day, like, okay, when there's these kind of events, okay, in your river system. Unlike largemouth in the Potomac, it's a tidal fishery. It's a little bit different. They'll tend to hunker down as best they can. So you want to know what your areas are. So I have my areas on the upper Potomac. Now they've been impacted by 4 to 5 feet of water. So where in my areas am I now going to go, and what am I going to adjust? I'm going to adjust. I'm going to stay off the jig for this weekend. I'm going to the spinner bait because it's rising water. They're moving now with the rising water, okay? They're not sitting still. They know that this rising water is going to bring current flow, more current flow, okay, down into their sections and areas, right? which means they're going to be feeding again. All right. They're not going to be as soft a bite. Last week, while we caught some big smallies, it was a soft bite smallie. It was kind of like, on a jig. It wasn't like, okay, it was more like following it, and you just felt a little bit, okay? And when you feel a little bit from a smallie, it's a totally different feeling because normally they crush it, okay? But they almost act more like largemouth bass in the fall sometimes, and they definitely do in the wintertime. They don't just crush it and then do that turn and move, okay? They kind of like push it a little bit and then go, okay? So I'm going to lay off the jig and I'm going to go to the spinnerbait. I don't have any spinnerbaits because I tied them on to get ahead for tomorrow. But I'm also going to be throwing the crankbaits, okay, going through the crankbaits right now. I'm getting ready. And then obviously I'm going to be just free smashing with the jerkbaits, okay? Now, patterns, colors, colorations on these. I'm not a big fan of, in the summer it's a little bit different. Enticement. In the fall, it's action, in my opinion. And so while color still is a factor, you want to go with those colors that are going to stand out, okay? Now, we also have what's the impact of fall in our Western Maryland reservoirs, which are pretty much on fire right now for both trout and bass, smallmouth bass, okay? And so the jerkbait is always effective on my Western Maryland lakes. Doesn't matter whether it's Savage, doesn't matter Jennings Randolph, doesn't matter. The mountain reservoirs, jerkbaits, fire, okay? And you want to go with that pattern, or you want to go, if you're fishing out, you want to go with your forage patterns, okay? That's a perch pattern, all right? Highly effective on your reservoir and impoundments or your ponds, okay? Because it mirrors that. And again, if they're opening up, okay, on impoundments, water flow, it's the same, mates. It's the same equivalency of we're just getting 3 feet or 4 feet of water coming down from up north from the upper Potomac heading down to Little Falls, okay? It's the equivalent of Pickwick or Wheeler, okay, or Gunnersville or whatever. All that stuff along the Tennessee River that when they decide to increase water flow. It's the same dynamic. It is a little different, but it's really the same principles you want to apply. What's going to happen when they dump, right? When they increase the water flow? What happens below? What happens when they get 8 inches of rain in Pennsylvania and it works its way down to Little Falls, where I am, okay? Great Falls, D.C., okay? What's going to happen on my river, all right? And that's why rising water levels in this part is a spinnerbait bite, it is a jerkbait bite, and is a crankbait bite. That does not mean that you can't fish your Ned rig, but Ned rig was last week. The last 2 weeks in 3 feet of water or less. Let it sit on the bottom. Don't move it for 5 to 6 seconds. Slowly drag it on the bottom. Pop it. Boom. Hit. Throwing a fluke. Okay? Same thing. Last week. Throwing a fluke. Throwing a tube. Rising water, rapidly rising water, like we've seen in the upper Potomac now, kind of puts those baits on the back burner, and you want to go move towards, crankbaits. Okay? Crankbaits is what you want to do. You want to cover a lot of this deeper water, okay? Because it's still rising, mates. I was out there this morning. I'll probably stop back by this evening. I got to pick up one of my girls at like 7 o'clock tonight. She's got stuff going on after school, which gives me an opportunity to leave a little bit early, swing by the lock, get out of the car, walk down the river, walk the bank, whatever, kind of look at what's going on. It's probably going to be up another 3 to 4 inches from this morning when I was out there. Okay. And that to me tells me if that's happening at the lock, it's happening in the middle of the river. Okay. That means we're seeing an increase in the water levels, okay, in the middle of the river. And that's where the smallies have consistently been, okay, for the last 2 to 3 weeks. So, I mean, there's no smallies shallow. Of course there is, okay, but the big ones have been, more towards the center of the section of the river adjacent to the islands. Now, I will be doing I requested to do video breakdowns on the sections that I fish on the Upper Potomac, talking about the various islands and the narrows and the islands that I have found to be more productive, that have pools, that have areas of deeper water adjacent, maybe across the narrows on the backside. A lot of people sleep on in the Upper Potomac between Little Falls and Seneca Landing, which is a lot of water, mates. Okay. A lot of people sleep on the Virginia side. Most of the people entering the Upper Potomac are entering in a kayak or canoe in those sections, maybe a John with a mud rucker, but I mean, like, but for the most part, it's that. They're entering on the Maryland side, and they're staying adjacent to the Marylands. There's islands that run in the middle of the river that are very, very long, okay? Some of them a mile, okay? And people don't want to have to go all the way down, especially if they're not floating, and get on the other side of that island and have to come back up against the to get back to the lock, right? So they basically stay, within 30 yards of the towpath from Riley's Lock all the way down Swains and below, okay? So that leaves a lot of water on the opposite side, depending on whether or not Minnehaha, depending on Gladys, Elm, depending on all the different, I think you got Harrison's, I think. And so it really leaves a lot of water on the Virginia side that doesn't have as many points of entry as the Maryland side. Unpressured, mates. Okay, and there's some deep pools over there. And so that's where a lot of the big fish have come. And the other sections that you want to look for, especially, with the jerkbait, okay? And I love this color. I had to check this out, mates. This is the original one I had that I got specifically done for Jennings Randolph in Western Maryland, okay? And then I found that I was getting wasn't getting the hookups, which is crazy with the trebles, right? But it was getting pushed or whatever. And I had a jackal re-range with a chartreuse bottom that was just getting pummeled. My biggest fish had come off that re-range, okay? In Jennings Randolph. Some of the biggest smallmouth outside of New York, and then down south that I've ever caught, in Maryland and Virginia, okay? And that includes Susquehanna. And so, but I love this because I knew they were following it. I could see it during the summertime, late spring and summer, but I wasn't getting the commitment that I was getting out of that jackal re-range. And so Brian hooked me up with the same one with a chartreuse, is a purple sculpin, chartreuse bottom. And it totally changed the entire dynamic the last time I was up there. Mind you, that lake is 3 hours from me, mates. So don't think that this bait is ever going to stay at home if I'm going to go 3 hours to go fishing again, which I have planned to do right after Thanksgiving. I will be on Jennings Randolph, okay? And I will be up fishing up Hancock, Pawpaw, Hancock, Upper Potomac, okay, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. You can bank on that, and you can bank on some big ones getting caught, okay, because that's when you catch the big ones. But that chartreuse is the same coloration that was on that re-range in my purple sculpin one. And so now I've got a diver, more of a diver, and then more of what I will use tomorrow on the river. And the reason why I will use it and where I will use it is I will take this bait, I'll increase it. I'll change my line up, okay? You've got the narrows that come between these islands, okay? As the water comes down the Upper Potomac, you've got the islands that usually run like a cone, okay? Like this. Water goes on both sides. And then you also have cuts, we call them narrows, okay? In between, a lot of these lock sections have a narrow where water will run through and cut an island in half or in a third, right? And it's usually very rocky. It's usually only about 2 feet so. Now, it obviously could be 4 feet right now. But during the summertime, it's about 1.5 feet to 2 feet. There's videos you could find on YouTube, JL Scott Fishing and Eats, or on my Facebook page, JL Scott Fishing and Eats. You could see me walking in the narrows, okay? Wade, my kayak, boom, behind me. I'm walking in the narrows fishing, okay? It's about 20 yards wide, 10 yards to 20 yards wide, very rocky. slant, okay? And then as it empties out, so above it, you've got a pool on the Virginia side, okay, of the island. There's a whole bunch of rocks, and then there's deep water. It's usually like 6 feet, okay? That's a pool, and that's a very good pool, okay? And then you've got water coming down through that cut, the narrow, that comes back towards the Maryland side. And as you may see the video where there was 6 tires that were positioned outside of that, right? Well, there's a drop off there where it really literally right now is probably 10 feet of water because of all the rain that we just got. Normally it's 3 feet. It's a drop to 3 to 4 feet. Okay, and then it comes back to the middle of the river and it's about 2 feet, right? But it's a drop there. It's a sandy side, kind of a rocky shell bed bottom. All right. That is where I will go tomorrow and throw the jerkbait. Okay. Right at that area, coming into that area, shallower from the side, over that deeper water, twitching it right there because they're going to be sitting there because every time there is a rain event where we see this kind of volume shift in our water, that's where they go in that section of the river. They move to that deeper area and they ambush whatever's coming out of that narrow, okay, that gets caught in that narrow. Because once you get caught in that narrow, if you're bait fish and you get caught in that from above, you go down that by mistake or whatever, the water's bringing you straight down to them. There's no escape, okay? Because you got rocks on your left, rocks on your right. It funnels you right into that deep water. And that's why you'll see people on the rock that have come across from the Virginia side on that rock, bank fishing, wade fishing. I mean, they're not in the boat. They waded across on top of that rock, thrown into that deep hole on the above the island on the Virginia side, and then below the island on the Maryland side. Okay. What I mean by side, I mean, you're closest to the Maryland side. You're a good 1,000+ yards, from actually Maryland. Okay. You're in the middle of the river. But when you look on a map, I'll break all that down for everybody. And I'll mark the pools. I'll mark the deeper water. I'll mark the ledges. I'll mark all these places that if you came out with me, this is where I would take you. And trust me, mates, in the spring, if you come out with me, I'm going to take you where I go. Okay. And I could care less what you do with it. Okay. It's your river as much as it is mine. Okay. We all own these rivers are ours. Okay. They're ours. So share, don't share. My point is I want to get people on fish and I want people to understand how the fishery is coming back. Okay. And the biggins that are there and to do all those things that we've seen. Now, this is the big why. Okay. People are like, why are you going to do that? Why do you care? What do you, I care because what we've just seen, Hobie just announced its 2023 schedule. Okay, for its trail. For those folks who are not familiar with Hobie, Hobie is a kayak fishing bass open series. Okay, they maxed their events out. At least they did this year at 200. That's probably going to stay for 2023. Depending on who you talk to, it is the premier kayak fishing series. Okay, obviously that's subjective. Okay, but that's what you're going to get. It is an awesome series. Okay. From all the feedback that I've gotten from people. All right. You also have KBF and then you have Bass. Bass has not released its schedule yet to my knowledge for 2023, but I expect them to be in the South, deep South, Southeast Florida to Texas. I don't expect them. Okay. Surprise for the Hobie schedule, which I'm freaking totally pumped about, is on the one hand, I'm pumped about it. And on the other hand, I'm disappointed. So I'm pretty bipolar when it comes to that. In terms of scheduling. No schedule is ever perfect. No schedule is ever going to please everybody. Okay. But the Hobie 2023 schedule includes the New River in West Virginia. So I'm loving that because the New River is ahead. That's the oldest river we got. Okay. That is the oldest river we got, I think, in the States, mates. All right. It is a crazy, sick river. All right. And it don't matter whether you're a whitewater kayaker, you're a canoe guy, you're a float guy, you're a fish. It don't matter. As far as rivers go, that river is sick. Okay. New River, the brand new New River Gorge National Park. It's the latest park to ever get sanctioned. Okay. Most of the national parks we all know came around Teddy Roosevelt's time, right? All the parks got designated during the early 1900s. Okay. We've gone a pretty long time before getting another national park, right? And so that thing's ginormous. All right. And so on that river system, there's going to be a Hobie event. Now, I don't know what the boundaries are going to be yet. That's probably not going to get worked out. It's coming out of Beckley, so that's kind of in the middle of West Virginia on the New River, I guess, middle-ish. It's good ways from Virginia, okay, from where most people that I know fish the New Rivers towards that part. But I'm pretty stoked as someone, who's an advocate for our region's river systems to get events, to get more events. I still wish that these guys would open their eyes. I don't know whether it's political. It could be political. It could be stuff that I'm completely unaware of. I'm in the dark, and I'm just ignorant of. But why there's no James River event? I don't care if it's Smallies on the Upper James, like the New River Smallies, okay, or Tidal James for largemouth bass. I don't get it. It is what it is. I guess I have more work to do. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Like, to get people out to understand the size of the fish and the quantity of fish, all these events from the boater community are blowing up catch rates on the James River, okay? And yet we still haven't seen any kayaking events on the James River from national trails. But maybe Bass, maybe they know something. Maybe Bass is going to go there, and that's why KBF stayed on the Potomac and Hobie went to the New River. I don't know. But the downside to the Hobie schedule mates is we lose Susquehanna in the region. So we get one, and, that's a byproduct of probably registrations. Susquehanna is always a great event for them. They always sell it out. They've been there for like two years or so. 1,500 fish caught. I mean, it's crazy sick. Okay. But they made that change to another river system in our region. So, while I'm disappointed that it's not going to be on Susquehanna, I'm still pretty stoked that it's going to be on the New River. Same dates in July, the last weekend in July. It opens up some more water, gives some more of our water some national recognition. So I'm thankful for that. And then what's kind of interesting is both KBF and Hobie both choose a New York fishery. KBF chooses Lake George, and Hobie chooses Cayuga in June. Hobie chooses it in June. So that's June is Cayuga, and then the New River in July. Then they're going to La Crosse, back to La Crosse again. Last year they did Fox and Wolf. This year coming up, they're going to back Mississippi on La Crosse, and then end the year at Rayburn, which I figured it was going to be. I figured it was going to be Rayburn or Toledo Bend or Fork. Like, it's pretty consistent in terms of that. Now, early in the season, Hobie's going to Florida. So one of the mates, I think it was Lloyd, got your wish, bro. Like, Hobie will be starting off at the Harris chain. Then they're going back to Caddo, which they were just at, for the Tournament of Champions this last weekend. Quick shout out, Tournament of Champions. I want to do a quick shout out to Justin Largan, finished 15th with 247 inches over 3 days. Awesome job. He's from Virginia. And the Minor brothers, Nolan and Ewing Minor. Nolan with 273, finished in 4th. Ewing with 269.75, finished in 5th. And then Jody Queen from West Virginia finished 22nd with 214. And then I'm leaving somebody out. Pennsylvania. Steven Sisto finished in 29th. Ewing, go check it out. Ewing with 96.25 inches on the last day. That's pretty sick. All that stuff was sick. Great event. You can check that out on Tourney X. But they're going to be back to Caddo again for a regular event during the season. Then they're going to Santee Cooper, which was a surprise for me. I'm sure there's probably a Queen City event there that I missed on Santee Cooper. I think there normally is that they'll maybe partner up with. But I thought that they were going to rotate Santee Cooper and Hartwell. That was kind of the deal that I thought got said last spring. So they're not going to Hartwell. And then after Santee Cooper in South Carolina, they're going to Seminole. Back to Lake Seminole, which I believe Pennsylvania angler Jake Harshman, won that event. Either won that event a few years ago or finished in the top. in that event. So that is the schedule for 2023 for Hobie. So you've got Harris Chain, Caddo, Santee Cooper, Lake Seminole, Kentucky Lake. That was kind of a shock based on everything that's kind of like, I mean, based on KBF got beat up for scheduling Kentucky Lake and during when it did and the boundary, all the stuff, but KBF gets beat up on everything, it seems. But that was kind of a shock to me, I got to be honest. I mean, that and the Susquehanna kind of shocked me, I would think. Then Cayuga, New York, New River, La Crosse, and Sam Rayburn. So KBF Lake George and Hobie Cayuga. So let's just talk about this for a second. What message is being sent, mates, to us by KBF and by Hobie? Bass irrelevant because I don't think that they're going to even remotely come to the Northeast. Maybe they come. Bass comes to New York, obviously, okay, for its boating events. Well, let's leave Bass out of this for a second. What's Hobie and KBF really telling us? And what I mean by us, I mean people who live in the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic. We're at the bottom of the Mid-Atlantic, okay? And then you've got, if you go on my page, Virginia up, okay? Mid-Atlantic is really even New York, okay? And then you've got the Northeast all the way to Maine. What message is actually being sent to us as anglers in our region, okay? They're telling us that we are not an integral factor in their decision-making process of where they schedule lakes. Now, we are going to get the one-off. We are going to get the token event, okay? And in fairness, I'm not saying they're wrong. Because if you look at the Tournament of Champions, mates, I don't think there was anybody above Pennsylvania in the Tournament of Champions, okay? Steven Sisto, I think, was the furthest angler north in that entire event. And kudos to him. Again, MLF's Bass Pro Tour, the only angler from the Mid-Atlantic or the entire Northeast is from New Jersey. This is happening, okay? We need to understand and accept this, that this whole, like Northeast versus South and North versus Florida, these are real things that actually work into the psyche of people. Registrations matter. If we don't sell out events, Susquehanna always sold out, okay? But Winnipesaukee, I don't think sold out for Hobie in the Northeast. And that's on us, me included, because I didn't fish that event. I figured it was going to sell out. And I had other, weddings get scheduled, all these things get scheduled out. And you're like, so that's what's got to change for us. So everybody has got, if you're a Northeast angler, okay, Mid-Atlantic or Northeast, Mid-Atlantic angler, you got to fish the Potomac River. Okay, you've got to fish the Potomac River for KBF in April. Okay, you got to. All right. If you're having a problem finding a place to stay, if you need help on the Potomac River, if you need any of those things, reach out to me if you're from the Northeast. Okay, and you're going to come down, hang with me. I'll take you out for a couple days before the event. Show you what I know. I don't care. Feed you. I don't care. Buy you beer. I don't care. Just get down here. Okay. Secondly, you got to go to New York, mates. You got to go to Cayuga. You got to go to Lake George for KBF. It's the only way. You've got to sell those events out, mates. It's the only way you're going to get more events in the Northeast. Okay? And I'm going to say this, and I'll probably take some heat for this. This is why the KFL has probably been the most successful in the Northeast. Okay? This is why. Other than elite fishing, and then there's the other trails, Massachusetts and all that stuff. Okay? Let's say elite fishing. Okay? I think elite fishing is going to do really, really well next year. I like their schedule. And a lot of people are going to stay home and fish it because a lot of those Northeast anglers are probably not going to drive to Sam Rayburn. They're probably not going to drive to La Crosse, Mississippi. La Crosse, Wisconsin, and the Mississippi River, right? They're not going to drive to Seminole. They're not going to drive to Kentucky. They're not, right? And so Cayuga's it. So they got to sell. You got to sell out Cayuga. You got to, mates. We got to. People from down here got to drive up. People from up in Maine got to come down and sell that event out. If you want in 2024 to make the argument that more events should come to the Northeast. Otherwise, you are going to be expected and if you want to be part of Hobie or be part of KBF, you're going to be driving a lot, mates, and you're going to be at a disadvantage because it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more money to fish than it is a guy in Alabama. okay, than it is a guy in Georgia, right? Because all the events do the mileage, okay? So that's what I'm going to do, all right? I'm going to just pick Washington, D.C., and I'm going to take every single event in KBF, every single event in Bass, every single event in Hobie for mileage. And if you live in the DMV area, how many miles would you be putting on your truck or your body to go and fish? And then compare it to the people who live in live in the heart of Hobie land, the heart of KBF land. It's just a reality. It's no knock on them. God bless them. All right. I mean, KBF's going to be in Huntsville, Alabama. That's their headquarters. I mean, Hobie, that's their market. I mean, that's going to be their market. Like, and God, they need to do what they need to do. It's a business, and people need to understand that. I understand that it's a business. If we don't sell out events in the Northeast, if we don't get people involved in KBF on the Challenge Series level in all of the states in the Mid-Atlantic, which is what we're trying to do now, okay, to grow, to get events for our towns and our cities and our economic development. This is going to continue to happen, mates. All right. And so, again, people focus on payouts, right, for events. But what does it take to get that payout? If you got to travel, okay, from New Hampshire to Sam Rayburn, right, or Seminole, or Cotto, or Florida for KBF, right, out west, Arizona for KBF, okay, Gunnersville, Chickamauga, you got to do all that. And you happen to finish in the top 10, which is a feat. In reality, does the payouts really matter? I mean, if it's costing guys, I've talked to guys where it cost them $2,800 a season, and they weren't even fishing in the major national trails, like for AOI. They fished in like 2 events, okay? Or they fished KFL. Like, think about that. I mean, and so could be roadblocks. So, self-perpetuating, prophecy is when events get scheduled and we don't travel as anglers, we don't get more events. There's no balance in the schedule in that regard, because they've got to play to their strength, especially in a down economy like next year. The strength is going to be between Texas and Florida and Missouri, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, all up in there. That's the strength. That's the strength of Bass. That's the strength of Hobie. Now, KBF has a broader footprint because of the organization and its challenge series and everything, but I still think its base is probably still there for the most part. And so that's where Hobie left it. I mean, I think it's a great schedule. I just wish we got one more, like Susquehanna do, but reasonably, though, that makes sense. It makes sense that Smalley River for Smalley River, staying within the region, and they moved off of Winnipesaukee and moved down into New York. And maybe that gets a little bit more anglers from the Mid-Atlantic to make that trek up to New York, as opposed to going all the way to New Hampshire or beyond. I think KBF was Snow Pond up in Maine, right? That's a long, long ways for a lot of people. And I know that those are all factors into that. But I think that's it. I think that's all I got. Nice little hour right there. Again, if you have any questions about the Upper Potomac, I'll be out tomorrow. I can give you a download. Just check out the Facebook page. I may do a couple short videos out on the water to kind of show you. I've got my pictures loaded up from a week ago. So now I'll take more pictures tomorrow, and I'll be able to demonstrate in a side-by-side what I'm talking about. The same section of the river, the same hole, the same pool a week ago and today, what it looks like. Okay? Above the water line, right? And seam line and eddy wise. Like, what does it look like? How does the river change with this? So that's where we're at, mates. I hope everybody has a great trek into the weekend. Again, hit me up, message me, JL Scott Fishing and Eats, or just comment in the section. Check out the Black Friday deals. Again, Journey Outdoors, Susquehanna Fishing Tackle, Blue Ridge Muskies got 15% off, I think, for Black Friday. I don't know if that's on guided trips or not, but go on my JL Scott Fishing and Eats page or go on Blue Ridge Muskie on Facebook and check out the biggins that are actually getting caught in the Upper James right now for muskie. And happy birthday to Sam Scott. Okay. Awesome guy down in Virginia. Check him out. Get booked up, mates. If you want that great experience of that, maybe you don't fish for muskie. Like, since it's not in your area, it's just not something, muskie fishing's a unique thing, man. Like you want to get humbled quick, start muskie fishing. But he's a great guy. That's a great outfitter. Check them out. All right, mates. I enjoy it. I appreciate it. Appreciate that, all the love on the channel. I think we're above 24,000. And we've got some other things coming. So if you got any ideas, anything you want to get down, you want to go fishing, hit me up. Doesn't matter where, especially Virginia or Maryland coming up. Especially springtime. I'm starting to fill in the calendar for spring with some events that we got, plus other people's schedules are coming out. Probably do some sponsorships as well with a couple of our local and regional trails of people that I really, really like and want to be successful. So we'll do some things like that. And plus we've got a lot of our bait makers and sponsors for the studio coming up here for next year. We're going to blow it up and we're going to have some fun doing it. Okay. Again, I do not take myself seriously at all, mates. I'm up for any kind of pushback, hate, criticism. It's all good. In terms of moving things forward and getting people in the region on fishing some of these rivers, fishing some of these spots that they're unfamiliar with. And it's kind of like what it's all about. All right, mates. Hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week.